Some cars are remembered for their speed, others are remembered for their style, but few cars in history carry a story as glamorous and as haunting as the Ford Thunderbird. Born in the 1950s as America's glamour car, it became the pride of Hollywood, the favorite ride of movie stars, musicians, and legends. Yet behind the polished chrome and bright paint, the Thunderbird gained a reputation no one could have predicted. Time after time, this beautiful machine appeared in the shadows of celebrity tragedies, almost like a ghost following fame wherever it went. From crushed convertibles to mysterious deaths, the Thunderbird story is filled with both dazzling success and heartbreaking loss. And today, we're going to uncover why one of America's most glamorous cars became forever linked with sorrow. Ford Thunderbird was never just a car. When it rolled onto American streets in 1955, it was introduced as a personal luxury car, something completely different from anything Detroit had made before. It wasn't quite a sports car like the Corvette, and it wasn't a giant luxury cruiser like Cadillac or Lincoln. Instead, it was sleek, stylish, and designed to make a statement. For many, the Thunderbird symbolized youth, money, and freedom. It became a car that movie stars and singers loved to be photographed in. It wasn't just transportation, it was a ticket to glamour. But the same car that represented excitement and beauty also developed a strange shadow around it. Over the years, the Thunderbird kept showing up in stories of heartbreak, accidents, and even celebrity deaths. It's almost as if this glamorous machine carried a curse, connecting its shiny chrome to tragedies that no one expected. Back in the 1950s, America was obsessed with cars. They weren't just machines, they were fashion statements. The Thunderbird was born into this culture. When people first saw it at the Detroit Auto Show in 1954, they were stunned by its long hood, its two-seater setup, and its sleek low stance. Ford marketed it as a car for the successful man or woman who wanted performance and luxury in one package. Buyers couldn't get enough. Celebrities like Frank Sinatra and Marilyn Monroe were linked to Thunderbirds, and suddenly it was the car of Hollywood royalty. But glamour and danger often walked hand in hand. The first big shock came with actor Ernie Kovacs in 1962. Kovacs was one of television's first true stars, known for his wild sense of humor. Late one rainy night in Los Angeles, he lost control of his white Thunderbird convertible while speeding through Beverly Hills. The car skidded, slammed into a utility pole, and killed him instantly. The news shook the entertainment world, and suddenly the Thunderbird wasn't just the symbol of success, it became linked to loss. People remembered the image of Kovacs' crushed Thunderbird as much as his career. Tragedy didn't stop there. Just 2 years later, the Thunderbird was involved in another dark chapter with a music icon. Sam Cooke, known as the King of Soul, was driving his red Thunderbird the night of his death in 1964. While the details of what really happened remain debated, reports say he drove his T-Bird to a Los Angeles motel, where a confrontation ended with him being shot dead. The Thunderbird once again became part of the story, a glamorous machine parked outside a scene of violence and mystery. For fans of Cooke, the red Thunderbird became an eerie reminder of what was lost. A car meant to showcase freedom and style became the silent witness to one of music's most painful moments. As the years rolled on, the Thunderbird kept its shine in the spotlight. Ford redesigned it through the 60s and 70s, making it bigger, flashier, and more powerful. Celebrities like Elvis Presley bought Thunderbirds, and even President John F. Kennedy owned one. But for every photo of a Thunderbird in a glossy magazine, there seemed to be another headline tying it to misfortune. In 1966, singer Bobby Fuller, famous for the hit "I Fought the Law," was found dead in his mother's car, a parked Thunderbird, under suspicious circumstances. To this day, many fans believe the story of his death never added up, and once again, the Thunderbird became part of a tragedy with unanswered questions. By this point, people started whispering that the car carried some kind of dark charm. How could a vehicle so beautiful, so tied to fame and success, also be connected again and again to loss and tragedy? Was it just coincidence, or was the Thunderbird a symbol of how fleeting glamour can be? What made the Thunderbird such a magnet for celebrities was clear. It was gorgeous, powerful, and made anyone behind the wheel look larger than life. But what gave it the darker edge was how often those same stars who drove it ended up facing untimely deaths. The Thunderbird was no ordinary car. It was becoming an icon of both glory and grief. And this is only the beginning of the Thunderbird story, because as the years went on, even more Hollywood names, rock stars, and American legends would find themselves tied to this car. The Thunderbird didn't just fade into history. It carried with it a strange pattern that blurred the line between fame, fortune, and tragedy. The connection between the Ford Thunderbird and celebrity tragedy only grew stranger as time passed. By the late 1960s and 1970s, the Thunderbird had changed from a sporty two-seater into a larger, more luxurious personal coupe. It was no longer a nimble car aimed at competing with the Corvette. It had become a status symbol for the rich and famous, with long lines, wide bodies, and plush interiors. Yet even as the Thunderbird evolved, its reputation followed it. The car kept reappearing in the backdrop of sudden endings, scandals, and heartbreak. One of the most shocking cases was the death of actress Jane Mansfield in 1967. While Mansfield was not driving a Thunderbird at the time of her fatal crash, she had owned and been photographed in multiple Thunderbirds throughout her career. Hollywood gossip writers at the time pointed out the eerie detail. The same car that symbolized her bombshell glamour was also being linked to her tragic story. Mansfield's career had been filled with flashy images of her behind the wheel of her Thunderbird, smiling for cameras. When she died in a violent crash at just 34 years old, fans couldn't separate her from the Thunderbird's image. In their minds, the car had become almost cursed. This pattern continued into the rock and roll world. Rock culture and cars went hand in hand, and for many musicians, the Thunderbird was the ride of choice. It wasn't uncommon to see them roaring into clubs or recording studios in one. But once again, bad news followed. In 1969, actor and singer Brian Jones, one of the founding members of the Rolling Stones, was seen in a Thunderbird weeks before his mysterious death. While Jones didn't die in the car, fans latched onto the sight of him in a gleaming Thunderbird as one of his final public appearances. To many, the Thunderbird had become a kind of final stage, an unspoken symbol before tragedy struck. Through the 1970s, the Thunderbird kept popping up in strange places. Stories began to swirl about collectors who bought Thunderbirds once owned by stars, only to suffer bizarre misfortunes afterward. Some believed the car's connection to tragedy wasn't just coincidence, but something deeper, as if the Thunderbird itself carried the energy of the people who once drove it. It sounds like superstition, but the pattern was hard to ignore. Perhaps the most chilling case came in 1976 with actor David Carradine. Known for his role in the hit show Kung Fu, Carradine was involved in a serious accident while driving his Thunderbird. He survived, but the crash left him shaken and added to the growing legend that the Thunderbird was a dangerous car for celebrities. What made it even stranger was that years later, Carradine would die under bizarre circumstances unrelated to a car accident, but many fans still linked his earlier Thunderbird crash to the unusual, tragic arc of his life. The Thunderbird's glamour, however, never faded. Despite all these stories, it continued to be featured in music videos, photo shoots, and films. In the 1980s, it even became a cultural icon again, appearing in movies and being referenced in songs. Celebrities still loved it because of what it represented: freedom, beauty, and success. But for fans paying attention, the Thunderbird had a darker subtext. Even the way Ford marketed the car played into the tension. Commercials described it as a personal escape, a machine that let you live life on your own terms. The irony, of course, was that for many stars, that escape turned into something permanent. For every glamorous magazine cover showing a Thunderbird parked outside a mansion, there seemed to be a headline about another untimely death connected to it. The mystery only deepened when collectors started noticing how many Thunderbirds from celebrity estates came up for sale. These weren't just old cars, they were artifacts of famous lives cut short. Auction houses would list them proudly. Owned by Ernie Kovacs, driven by Sam Cooke, from the estate of Bobby Fuller. Yet behind the glamour of these auctions was the haunting truth. Each car carried the ghost of a story fans couldn't forget. By this point, the Thunderbird wasn't just a car anymore. It had become a character in its own right, woven into the mythology of Hollywood and rock and roll. Some saw it as coincidence. Others saw it as a pattern too clear to ignore. And for the fans, every new tragedy added another layer to the legend. The Thunderbird was supposed to be a symbol of life at its peak: success, youth, and beauty. But by the 1970s and beyond, it was becoming a reminder of how fragile all of that really was. It's as if the Thunderbird represented the dangerous edge of fame itself, how fast it can arrive, and how suddenly it can end. And the story doesn't end there, because as the decades continued, the Thunderbird kept its strange role, showing up in new celebrity stories, even after Ford retired the model. Its legend lived on, and the car's mix of glamour and grief made it unforgettable. The Ford Thunderbird was supposed to be a dream car, a rolling symbol of success and glamour, and in many ways it was. Celebrities loved it, fans admired it, and Ford proudly called it the glamour car of the year. But as we've seen, the Thunderbird became more than just a piece of Detroit steel. It became a witness to some of the most shocking moments in Hollywood and music history. Maybe it was coincidence, maybe it was fate, or maybe the Thunderbird was simply a reflection of fame itself, beautiful, powerful, but always living close to danger. Today, when one of these cars glides by at a car show, people see more than chrome and paint. They see ghosts of the stars who once drove them, and the strange mix of glamour and tragedy that made the Thunderbird unforgettable. So the question remains, was the Thunderbird cursed, or was it simply caught in the spotlight of lives destined to burn too brightly, too fast? Whatever the answer, one thing is certain. The Thunderbird will always be remembered not just as a car, but as a legend, forever tied to the highs and lows of American celebrity history.